Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, How to Choose a Protocol Vendor. My name is Brian Griffin. I am an account manager for PowerPhone. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce your presenters. We have Erin Winslow. She's an implementation manager for PowerPhone. Erin is a public safety veteran with experience as both a first responder and a 911 dispatcher. Before joining PowerPhone, Erin served as a supervisor and a training manager for a dispatch center in Virginia, leading a number of successful training and technology initiatives. As a PowerPhone implementation manager, Erin works with PSAPs across the country to deploy Total Response, our emergency call handling system. Erin believes very strongly in the importance of a structured call handling program and is looking forward to sharing this information with you today. Erin is joined by Rob Martin. Rob is a communications manager for Prescott, Arizona Regional Communications Center. Rob has been in several areas of public safety for the past 25 years and in communications arena for the last 16 of those. He manages an emergency communications center with 28 public safety dispatchers that process police, fire, and EMS calls for service. Thank you both for joining us. I see it looks as though Rob is having some difficulty coming and going here. So let's hope Rob can get back on this. But we'll start off with you, Erin.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you. Couple of things. First, I want to introduce PowerPhone since Brian just introduced me. So just a little bit about PowerPhone for those of you who aren't familiar. Our mission statement is to leverage people, processes, and technology to empower public safety. So we are all about empowering the telecommunicators. This is not, we don't want to dictate to the telecommunicators. We want to empower them to help others. Also, those that teach learn. That's our philosophy. So we learn by teaching and helping others. A few quick facts. We are not brand new to this game by any stretch of the imagination. PowerPhone has 37 years in 911. We've trained over 500,000 telecommunicators, and over 700 systems are deployed worldwide. Our system also, incidentally, has 5 issued U.S. patents. So we are definitely not new to this game. This is something that we are very passionate about as a company. First of all, for those of you who don't know, what is a protocol system? So a protocol system is basically structured information gathering. Incident-specific lines of questioning. We want to make sure that we gauge the severity and immediacy of response. So how quickly do we need to get people there? How severe is their emergency? As I'm sure you all know, that definitely ranges from it's not really an emergency, but to, gosh, I hate to bother you, but I cut my leg off. I mean, I know I've heard it all over my years. We also want to find out information regarding scene safety, both for the callers as well as the responders. We do need to make sure to keep our responders safe too. And we want to give information, advice on evidence preservation. It's not just about EMD. It's not just about medical. We want to offer pre-arrival instructions to assist with evidence preservation, pre-arrival instructions for medical, for fire. There are different things that people need to do. I know most people think about CPR, but there's so much more when you're talking about a protocol system. And of course, getting further information, being able to provide updates to responders en route is a huge benefit of a protocol system.
Erin, I was going to chime in real quick. It looks like more than half of the agencies attending are experiencing worse than normal staffing shortages at this time.
I can bet that that's the case. That doesn't surprise me at all with the way that staffing seems to be everywhere with what we're hearing. Let's see. There are so many benefits of a protocol system. The first and foremost, we want to look at standardizing information gathering. We want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. That helps address turnover and staffing issues. When your staff is more confident in what kind of questions they need to ask, especially, people are saying staffing is worse than ever. right now, if you can empower your dispatchers to have the appropriate information to ask, at the beginning of, from the beginning of the call, and not have to rely on a trainer or someone sitting next to them telling them exactly what to ask all the time. It makes a huge difference. So it does help with turnover, staffing issues. 0-minute response time. And that's the thing. There's this huge push nationwide to classify dispatchers as first responders. Well, let's make them true first responders. 0-minute response time. They're there at the time the emergency happens because they're on the phone immediately. Help begins right away when that call's answered. That dispatcher can start calming that caller down, or the patient down, or the victim down, and start to get information that's vital to response, as well as pre-arrival instructions. That goes a long way in scene safety, evidence preservation, patient survivability. So there are so many aspects of this. You also want to think about it increases your professionalism and your morale. I talked about addressing turnover and staffing issues too. You don't have to rely on that trainer sitting next to that call handler telling them what to ask. So then your caller hears that trainer as well as the dispatcher on the phone asking the questions. It creates trained, qualified virtual responders. It's not somebody who doesn't have a clue what's going on. They know exactly what questions to ask and exactly what instructions to provide without any delays. All of that leads to less stress, more job satisfaction, which hopefully in the long run means less turnover. Rob, I see that you're with us now. Is that right?
Yeah, Aaron, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Great to have you join.
All right, great.
Then a couple more benefits, and Rob, if you have any extras, I'll let you chime in too. But we want to talk about enhanced responder safety. We talked about how these questions should always address scene safety. Information is power. The protocols should always address scene safety, not just for our victims or our callers, but we want to make sure that scene safety is addressed, especially in this day and time with the way things have been going with public safety. We want to make sure that scene safety is addressed for the responders as well. Another aspect of it is QA. The QA process can identify trends, makes it easier to identify areas for improvement. It objectively measures performance. And there are certain ways that you want to make sure that you go about QA, but it lets you learn from mistakes. You don't want to punish for these mistakes. You want to learn from them. So that's another aspect, something to make sure that you use when you're talking about a protocol system. If you're not using it to evaluate what's going on, then it's not going to be as effective. It elevates a standard of care, reduces your liability exposure. That adds third-party accountability. The protocols that we provide to you means that we are also accountable for what we're giving you, for those protocols that we're putting in place. And it allows you all to meet public expectations. Ever since Rescue 911 came out back in, I think it was the 80s, I remember watching that. And once that show started, people started to expect that they could call 911 and that dispatcher could give them, could tell them exactly what they needed to do to save their lives. And that was great exposure for dispatchers, but it set that bar way high. And all the shows that are coming out now and the movies that are featuring dispatchers more, that's fantastic exposure, but that increases public expectations. Rob, do you have anything to add? Any additional benefits of a protocol system?
Well, I definitely wanted to highlight the consistency that the protocol system brings. I think that's a huge part of the benefits from this, and the main reason why is because every time that dispatcher gets info from the call taker, it needs to be the same. Because every time they get it from a different call taker. They're from a different style. Then they don't get the exact benefits each and every time. So I think that consistency with the protocol system like this is one of the best benefits.
That is a great point, Rob. All right. And Brian, you have another poll for
I
us?
do. I'm going to publish it right now. So if anyone is looking for it, there's a polls tab right at the bottom of your control screen, your control panel there. That is going to allow you to access these polls. Click on that button.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many of you all are using a protocol system and what systems you're using.
So right now, it looks like more than half of those in attendance are using a protocol system, but for EMD calls only at this point. More than half, 52% right now.
Okay. So there are similarities amongst the protocol vendors. We all want to improve the standard of care. We all have mostly the same goals. We want to champion call consistency. We all want better informed responders. We all offer pre-arrival instructions and content's basically content. The American Heart Association doesn't give one set of CPR instructions to one protocol vendor and another set to another. Content is content. We all operate under a standard of care, and we want to make sure that that's exactly that, a great standard of care. So really, therefore, you really need to choose a vendor based on their approach and the best benefit to your organization's culture and operating standards. We want to look at things like beware the one-trick pony. I know we had several that said they were doing EMD only. But if you dispatch police, fire, and medical, your protocols really should support that. Why do you want only your medical calls to be consistent? I know a lot of people think about specifically EMD instructions, but wouldn't you want all of your protocols, all of your call types to get consistent information? 3 separate protocols are cumbersome, so keep that in mind. 911 is for help, and people don't always know what kind of help they need when they call 911. You could ask them if they need fire, police, or rescue, and they really don't know what they need. They might need all 3. So you want all of that to be combined to make it easier for them to help your callers. And if not today, then over time. Maybe you start with EMD, but plan for the future. You want a system that can support that so that you could possibly phase that approach in. The next thing that we want to talk about is one size does not fit all. No 2 centers are alike. No 2 911 calls are going to be exactly alike. So you want to make sure that you beware the vendor that makes you adapt your operating standards to their protocols. With most 911 centers, they're run by one agency, but they dispatch for 2 or 3 different agencies. You might be independent or operated by the police department, but you dispatch for police, fire, and EMS. Animal control too, sometimes utilities as well. So you want to beware of those that are going to make you change your standards to their protocols. Protocols really must be able to be localized or customized. Otherwise, they won't be effective or they won't be used, because you'll have your call handlers go, oh, we don't have anything that applies to this type of call. And they're going to move on and do their own thing. That completely ignores the whole point of these protocols, which is call consistency. Do you have anything to add to that, Rob? Oh, all right. We might have lost Rob again. So
I'm back, Aaron.
Oh, you're back.
You there?
Okay. Do you have anything
Sorry.
to add?
Yeah, I would like to say it's a huge benefit with this is the customizable side of it. Because every agency has a different size, different sizes. They have different agencies. You might be urban, you might be rural. So, obviously one size is not going to fit all. You're going to need to customize that to fit your center, and I think that's one of the best parts of this protocol.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for that. You also want to keep in mind, talk about QA. Let's talk about QA for just a minute. You want to beware of the big brother approach or 20 questions. You don't want the dispatchers trying to score high on QA by asking unnecessary questions just so that they can ask the right number of questions. You really want to make sure that you're taking a positive approach to QA. You want to look at what worked, what didn't. Share best practices internally. If you're finding out, you want to make it a culture of learning and continuous improvement. So if you're finding out that your call handlers maybe are weak in a certain area or a certain type of call, that lets you know, hey, this is an area where they could stand to do some more, have a little bit more training. Let's enroll everybody in a particular online class, perhaps, that they can self-pace intake. You really want to make sure that you're making it about improvement, not being punitive, not punishing. It's not easy to create this positive culture and approach to QA, but the benefits are huge. You end up with better trained call handlers, better morale, and you can evaluate and improve your protocols too. With being able to customize, then you can improve your protocols when you find that, hey, you know what, this isn't really meeting our needs, or this wording seems to be tripping people up. Let's go in and make adjustments to this so that it works better. So you're not just looking at people when you're talking about QA, because it's quality assessment, not operator or call handler assessment. You're looking at the entire call. So you want to make sure that you're looking at both aspects. Rob, do you have anything else to add to that on QA?
Yeah, I was going to add that, don't forget that doing that QA might also bring up different ideas and changes, because we saw that with the COVID that came. COVID's obviously changed everyone's lives, but when the questioning came through, when our fire department and our EMS was trying to respond the best way they could and to be safe, we had to, look at that the way we were asking questions. So we worked with the protocol system and designed questions based to address that COVID the best way.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it is nice to have something that's fluid that you can make those adjustments to. You also want to make sure that your protocols are a good fit for your culture. You've got to be honest about your culture and which way your culture really is. Either way, it'll do the job, but it is probably the most important part of your decision. What is your culture? Is it rigid? Do you want a forced path linear approach? The person's secondary to the protocol. If that's your culture, then that's something to make sure to keep in mind when you're looking at the different protocol systems. Now, if your culture is, or you want it to be, where your call handlers are more empowered, can have some flexibility, and it's more of a guide. The protocol is a tool, kind of like, if you're talking about a saw in the hands of a skilled craftsman, the more refined, the better the saw, the better the craft that comes out of it. If you want that type of aspect to be the fit and the culture in your agency, then that's something that you also need to keep in mind when you're looking at different protocol vendors. So it's going to make a difference. Rob, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you hit everything on that one.
Okay, great. So the next thing that we want to talk about is the role of technology. Card sets or software, multiple apps, cards. Does the software play well with others? So when you're talking about card sets or having multiple apps, multiple card sets, you've got to make sure that any changes or updates are updated completely across the board. You can't forget anything, because otherwise you're not going to be providing that consistency. That includes that extra set that maybe you throw in a go box in case you've got to go to a backup center or go dispatch from your comms bus or something like that. whatever it may be, or even out of the back of a van in the parking lot. I've done training with all of those things. Everyone has a different approach. So you want to make sure that if you end up with card sets, it can be cumbersome to have to make sure that all of those are updated. How often do CPR recommendations change? So you've got to keep that in mind. Plus, if you decide to customize and you want to make some changes, you want to make sure that those are updated and everything. And if you're talking about technology and software, does it play well with others? Does that company work with the CAD developers to work on improving interfaces or even developing interfaces that maybe don't exist yet? So you want to make sure that they play well with others, that they work with these other software companies. Then you've got to look at your financial considerations, not just your upfront costs, but you've got to look at training, certification, expense. You've got your initial training and certification expenses, but then you've got your ongoing. What about recertifications? How are those done? Do they have to go have all of that training in person? How available is it? What's the quality of that training? Is it available online? Do you have to send people to training? Then you've got your expenses involved in sending people to training. If they don't have training immediately in your nearby area where it's local, then you've got to send people to training elsewhere. How much does that cost to add? Hotel expenses, food expenses, mileage on a vehicle. So those are all things to keep in mind. Plus, you've got your maintenance expense. What does maintenance get you? You want to make sure to look at that. Are you getting just software maintenance? Or does that give you all of your updates? Does that give you 24/7 support? Or is it only during the day and then you've got to pay extra if you want 24/7 support? Is that maintenance including your recertifications, additional training? I talked earlier about during QA, you may identify areas where you need to add additional training, and just maintenance maybe include that, or someone to help you when you realize that you need to customize something. Is someone going to be available to customize that for you or help you with it, or does that cost extra? Rob, can you think of any other financial considerations that you looked at when you were going through your procurement process?
No, I think you hit most of them. I would just emphasize on the training. I think that's the only one that's not really transparent. Everything else you can kind of see up front, but with the training, you never know if your staff's going to be going up or down, or like you mentioned, the QA. So you definitely want to have something that's available to you, easy access and affordable, so you know exactly what you're going to be up against.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you have to pay for certifications for every new dispatcher and you're low on your staffing and you've got to bump up staffing quite a bit or have several people that you have to hire, that's going to cost potentially a lot of money depending on how that certification process and expense goes. So we want you to make sure that you do your due diligence. Look at, when you're looking at your protocol vendors, look at their reputation in the industry. Are they innovators? Are they thought leaders? Are they looking to see what's the next step? What can we do next? What is happening in our area or our different states in our culture that's going to bring changes? Mental health is one of those big things that I know we've been looking at. And what is the difference? Some different states have different requirements for mental health that they're starting to put into place. Are the protocols going to be flexible for those types of things? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about innovators and thought leaders, not just the technology side of things. Yes, that's important, but you want to make sure that they're willing to be flexible and flow with the changes and the requirements from state to state. Performance during the sales process. Is your salesperson just buy our product, buy our product, buy our product? Or are they available to answer all of your questions? Are they giving you references? You want to ask those hard questions, not just go to an agency, oh, we love it, it's great. Ask those questions about what happens in this scenario. How does it perform? What do you do when this comes up? You want to make sure that you're asking all of those questions when they give you references. Talk to them about the support process. Have you ever had to contact support after hours? How responsive were they? How does that process work? How easy are they to get in touch with? How long does it take for them to call you back? Regardless of whether it's a major issue or not, how long does that process take? You don't want to have to wait forever in the 911 industry. So, Rob, why don't you talk to us about how your process went when you purchased PowerPhone's total response system for the city of Prescott, Arizona?
Well, first, the biggest thing was we wanted to be able to customize it. And so looking at different vendors, different protocol systems, we wanted to make sure it was something that we could adapt to ourselves, because we didn't know, if it was going to just be a standard template, and we knew that, with our, our terrain and our population is a little bit somewhat unique. So we wanted to make sure that we could, if we wanted to make some changes, we could. We didn't want to get stuck with something that was just one solid platform. And so we also, that way we could adapt it to our policies and procedures instead of the other way around. So I think that was a really important benefit. So some of the things we learned through it was to involve all the stakeholders early. We wanted to get buy-in. So we dispatch for 8 agencies out of here, 4 fire and 4 police. So we had to make sure that they were on board as well, because they're the ones that fund us. Right. And then also we want to get buy-in on the floor from all our dispatchers and call takers and all our staff, because they're the ones that are going to be using it. So we wanted to make sure that it was something that they looked like it was going to be comfortable to them, even without using it. So, and with that, we had to take baby steps. We didn't want to go bring in too much too fast. So we wanted to make sure that we took it slow and didn't make some kind of rash decision, or just a quick buy and then got something that we didn't want.
Right.
So the other thing was we wanted to be vocal with the vendor. We wanted to make sure that we polled the staff and had them come up with certain questions, concerns, and then we approached that to the vendor and said, hey, what about this? Are you going to cover that? So I mean that was a huge part of the process. So some of the benefits that we realized through that, again, I talked about the consistency. I think that was a huge part of it, because when that call taker takes that call and then passes that info to the dispatcher, the more that they use that protocol and they work with each other, they get to learn the questions, and that will just make them faster. And then the dispatcher knows exactly what they're going to be getting from the call taker. So that was a huge part of it. Pre-arrival instructions were effective. The main reason why is because you don't forget anything. You run through those questions, that format each time, and what happens with that is you know that you're not going to forget any important information. So without that, and that kind of brings in the other protocols. So we do fire, police, EMS, and a lot of systems have always done just the EMS side, and not so much like the police side. And so one of the biggest things we saw was on the police side, you have like domestic violence calls. You want to make sure you're asking all the correct questions, like weapons and descriptions, stuff like that. And sometimes when you're going off the cuff, you don't get all that stuff, and then the dispatcher doesn't have all that appropriate information. So then they have to backtrack, and there's delays, and then the officer safety is a huge concern, because then they're showing up with not all the information that they need. So
yeah, absolutely. I've seen that happen plenty of times.
So the other thing that was a huge part of it was the CAD. I can't stress enough that make sure that protocol system is going to work with your CAD system, because that workflow has to work. And if you've got a CAD that doesn't work right with it or doesn't flow right with it, it's going to cause a lot of problems. So make sure that vendor is going to that protocol system is going to work well with your CAD system. And the last thing I guess I'll say is the support. And make sure that with any vendor you're looking for, make sure that they have a real good customer service and support center. Because I can't stress enough how many times you have an issue and you call or you try and get a hold of someone, and it's a nightmare to get that good help. So make sure that you have a good support system and customer service through that.
That's all really great information, and from someone who's actually gone through the process, which I've gone through the process on the agency side myself before I came to work for PowerPhone. Part of the reason why I wanted to come to work for PowerPhone was because that process was so fantastic. But yeah, so I mean, you hit the nail right on the head with a lot of that information. Let's see. So our advice to you, we want to make sure that you are an educated buyer. Do your research. Be aware that there is no national certification for dispatchers. Okay. And a vendor may call it that, but there's not actually a national certification for dispatchers on the nationwide, on the government nationwide level. Watch out for complex legal agreements. You want to make sure that you're looking at those. Are you going to be tied into something that you can't get out of for however many years? Or is it going to be something that, is year to year? You also want to look out for, it's the fact that it is the vendor's job to support you, not to dictate you. Protocols should be designed to help, not handcuff. And that's one thing that we can't stress enough. You want to make sure that the protocols work for your agency, for your locality, and can be flexible for those situations and those circumstances. Like I said before, a huge thing right now is mental health. And I know in Virginia, they've passed certain laws and they're going to start having certain requirements. Well, our requirements might not be the same in Virginia as they are in Michigan or Florida or California. So you want to make sure that they are flexible so that way those needs can be addressed by your protocol system. In the long run, though, all of this research, all of this work is worth it. Greater call handling consistency, real benefits to the callers and responders, improved morale, a higher standard of care, and lower liability risk. That's the thing that you want to keep in mind is then you're sharing the liability. It's not just on you. You've got somebody else to back you up and help you. We want to remind everybody that the webinar replay will be emailed today. Be sure sometimes, depending on filters, they end up with a junk or clutter email. So make sure you check those if you don't get that. Normally it comes pretty quickly. PowerPhone, we also have a website with a multitude of resources, powerphone.com. You can also request additional information that way. Of course, you can reach out to me directly. Having been through the procurement process and getting the quotes from the different vendors and, what I saw, I'm happy to share any of that information. As well as you can reach out to me directly, ewinslow@powerphone.com. And we also have info@powerphone.com for any additional questions that may come up. We highly encourage you all, do your homework. Please, if you have questions, reach out to us. Don't make any assumptions. Just ask the questions and, we've worked in the field, so we want to make sure that you all have all the answers and make an educated decision before you make a purchase.
Okay.
Any other closing remarks, Brian or Rob?
No, I would just like to say, thank you to Total Response. We love the system, and it I would say the only problem we've had was just the initial startup. Just like anything else, it takes some time to get your folks trained and comfortable with the system, and I think that's any system. But once you get that taken care of, then it's all downhill from there.
Thanks, Rob. One last question. Lee wants to know if there's a demo we could take a look at. So, Lee, you are going to receive, again, a recording of today's meeting. You also are going to be able to access demonstrations of PowerPhone's Total Response software on our website. And the best thing to do is to reach out, and we will follow up with you as well and schedule a one-on-one demonstration. That way we can learn more about your agency and your needs and show you how Total Response can help support you. Okay.
Absolutely.
So I think that's it, Erin.
Yeah, I think so. I want to thank Rob again for your help and your input. We really appreciate it. It's always great to have information from someone who's been there, extra information from somebody else who's been there and has shared in the experience. I know it always made that process easier for me when I was going through situations like this. So again, thank you, Rob, very much. And please reach out.